By year 2000, we had 20 hotels. We were the largest hotelier in the Bay Area. And actually, frankly, in being a large hotelier in the Bay Area was a great thing in year 2000, as the dot-com boom was still going, and the economy was we had a different administration than we do today. And the economy was very strong, et cetera, et cetera. We were in a great place. One of the models we used in creating the company came back to something that I learned back at Stanford Business School 28 years ago, 27 years ago. And that was called the service profit chain. It comes from some Harvard Business School professors, and it's based upon the premise that if you actually create a great corporate culture, it will rub off on your employees. Your employees will be more enthusiastic. Point number 2 on the heart. If the employees are enthusiastic, that's going to lead to more loyal customers. If the customers are loyal, that's going to lead to a profitable and sustainable business. And then from that profitable, sustainable business, you can invest back in culture. It's a virtuous circle. That's what John Mackey calls it. John Mackey and Whole Foods Markets, that's their approach to business. The reason we came up with this is 1996. As our company was growing quickly, we learned that as we went from 2 or 3 hotels to, at that point, 11 or 12 hotels, and now we have 40 hotels today in 2008, that our culture was an important part of our growth. So we invited in some executives from Southwest Airlines, and we did an offsite retreat with our top 35 managers, and we studied Southwest Airlines for 2 or 3 days. And what we found is that this model absolutely defines Southwest's approach to business. So we said, this is how we want to do business. And we turned it into a heart in terms of the format of how to actually communicate it to our employees, because about 60% of our employees have English as a second language. So our initial approach to trying to talk about the service profit chain and something that was rather theoretical was going over people's heads. People were not resonating with it. So this is our approach to doing business, and I call it karmic capitalism because it's sort of like what goes around comes around. And that's what this really says. And it says point number 4 on the heart is profitability. Profitability is the lagging indicator of your success. It's what happens when you've done the other 3 things first. So this was our business model back in late 90s to 2000. By early 2001, I was in a somewhat schizo place in my life because the business had been very successful the prior 5 or 6 years. I had a book that came out in January of 2001 called The Rebel Rules, Daring to Be Yourself in Business. Richard Branson wrote the foreword to it, and the company seemed to be in a great place. But privately, beyond all that public accolade, I knew that we were in trouble, and we were in trouble as a company. And I could see that because what happened after the dot-com boom was a bust. And by first quarter of 2001, that bust was becoming very, very tangible in the Bay Area. How many of you are from the Bay Area? Oh my gosh, wow. Well, good to see you neighbors. That was a difficult time. It was a very difficult time for whatever business you were in the Bay Area. And so I started to see that. I started to see that this was a time that was going to be difficult. It only got worse. I stopped taking a salary in April of 2001, thinking that me not taking a salary in a company of 1,500 employees was going to make a difference. It didn't make much of a difference. And by 9/11, 2001, the world changed, and it has changed ever since. And it certainly changed in the travel business. If someone in the hotel or airline business, for the first few months after 9/11, no one was traveling. And into 2002, it became worse. And it became worse for a lot of reasons. We went to war twice. We had SARS, where Asian travel basically stopped for 9 months. And for those of us in the Bay Area, we're very reliant upon Asian travel. So basically, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And the hotel market in the U.S. that got hurt the worst was the Bay Area, by far. In fact, since World War II, there's no hotel market in the country that had been hurt as badly as the Bay Area was between 2001 and 2005. So we were the largest hotelier in the Bay Area, and we were in a market that had been a very good market, and it overnight became a very bad market. So if you're a CEO of a company and you're not taking a salary anymore, and you're starting to wonder if you're going to have to tell all of your employees that they no longer can take salaries or wages, what do? Well, you go to, I went from being the guy on the left to the guy on the right very quickly. And when you're in that sort of state of mind, what do? Well, I went around the corner. Our office is in the Union Square area of San Francisco. I went around the corner, and there's not an independent bookstore around the corner, but there's a Borders bookstore right around the corner. And I went in there, and I didn't go into the business section to look for a clue. I went to the self-help section of the local bookstore to try to get a clue for what we were going to do. And I actually came upon Abraham Maslow, and I spent 2 hours virtually with sunglasses on at my lunch hour thinking, okay, I'm the CEO of this company and I'm reading Maslow in the stacks of borders. What if somebody sees me reading Maslow? As if it was a bad thing. I had only learned about Maslow a little bit in college and in business school, but I remember that I resonated with the message. And the message was really this. For those, most of you have probably heard of Maslow. For those of you who haven't, let me give you a brief primer on Maslow. Maslow was really the first well-known psychologist to say to his community, the psychology and psychiatry community, why do we study worst practices as opposed to best practices in human behavior in our approach to psychology? And that came from the idea that Skinner and Freud and other prior psychiatrists or psychologists had generally studied people who were in a troubled state, and they came up with a definition of the human condition that sort of revolved around that. And Maslow said, let's go study Eleanor Roosevelt, Gandhi, Socrates, 1,000 high-performing, fulfilled individuals, and let's see what we learn from them. And from that, back in the mid-20th century, Maslow came up with the hierarchy of needs, which is what he's most known for. And it's the idea that we have, all of us as humans have basic physiological needs, water, food, sleep, etc. And if we don't have those needs met, it becomes a predominant need, and everything else up the pyramid sort of goes away. Because if you have not eaten by 4 o'clock this afternoon, you will know, and it'll start to actually, unless you're on a fast, in which case you go to the top of the pyramid really quickly. But only for so long. I've done that. So your physiological needs have to be met, and Maslow said by about 70% before you can move to the next level, your safety needs. And then the next level, social belonging needs, which you guys got a lot of this morning and last night. I saw that, it's a great environment with the peaks in the background to actually meet people. So social belonging needs were the 3rd level. The 4th level was esteem, how we feel ourselves in context of the world. And then finally, at the top of the pyramid, Maslow talked about self-actualization. Now, Maslow is from Brooklyn. He was not from Marin. He was this guy who was a hard-boiled Brooklyn kind of guy. And he talked about self-actualization. When I go out as a San Francisco CEO with a company called Joie de Vivre in the hospitality business, sometimes people say, well, this stuff you're talking about only is relevant to you and your company. And I remind them that there was an organization that for 12 years had an actual ad campaign out there in the world called Be All You Can Be. Who is that organization? The U.S. Army. Because the U.S. Army had a division of the Army that studied Maslow and studied the idea of self-actualization.